Hello and welcome back to The Dive, Season 6, Episode 9. Azael's back. Welcome.
Welcome back, specifically you.
Thank you.
Where were you?
Because every time you leave and come back, I remember, Azael misses when you put exclamation on the number.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was like, ooh. Yeah,
that was nice. That's your welcome back present.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't get you anything. So I'm so sorry. I was in Utah. It was super fun. I went hiking, went on a road trip with some friends, did a bunch of hiking, ate a bunch of good food, watched all the LCS games in the car on the way back. So watched all the games. It was fun.
This episode of The Dive sponsored by Utah.
Go to Arches. It's bomb.
Arches specifically, I guess.
Yeah, the national park. Highly recommend.
All right, cool.
We have some business to settle, Mark.
We have business? What is it about?
We got very close to ending the bet, and I was like, oh my God.
I wasn't worried.
We have not ended the bet. Team Liquid should have lost.
No, they shouldn't have.
To my boy Revenge.
They should have won that game instead of losing up Dragon Soul over nothing when they were in control of that game. We want to talk about who should have won that game.
We can get into the specifics later of how funny that game was. And it definitely delivered on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
But
first,
it made me realize that we have to set the terms of our bet because we could have resolved the bet already. Like if the bet was already over and I had won, then I'd be like, oh, I want to make the terms. Mark's got to pay me $10,000.
And he's a slave for the rest of his life.
So
I was watching Yu-Gi-Oh recently, and they made Joey Wheeler wear a dog suit for a couple episodes for a week, and then he just made him yap like a dog the whole time. So that was like, hey, that's a pretty good bet we could use.
I like that one.
I feel like that one's funny on a personal level, but not for a podcast, maybe not for the listeners. Mark just like,
well, Freak will sub in, and I'll just be like behind Kobe as the dog.
So we could incorporate what I'd come up with for this bet, which is we're going to have some sort of spicy food, either like chips or chicken wings or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking 2 or 3 instances, and then the other person, the winner, gets a bell. And as we're doing the episode, if I'm assuming that I'm winning. If I don't like what Mark's saying, I hit the belt. He's got to eat one.
I'm super down for this. The only thing I'll say is depending on what product we get, the number of iterations of this needs to change. Because when we did the one from a couple years ago on the desk, and I think you ate one of the chips as well, potentially. It was like
this the ghost pepper ones?
It was not the chip that was hot. It was the sauce. It was like, bright red, like neon.
The one I did right before casting was ghost pepper.
Yeah.
But it was the same sauce.
I don't know if they were the same, but probably.
It was like 600,000 Scoville. Like we looked it up later, and I was like, oh my God, this is like the last 3 level in like Hot Ones. If you're watching Hot Ones, it's like the bomb on level, like. And I ate it, and like your body has like a panic attack, and I'm like,
so
like if that's the level we're at, I can't do that 3 times in an hour and not like die.
All right, maybe 2, and also we'll make sure that it's at or below that level. Maybe
because for 10 minutes I'm going to be chugging water and milk.
Okay, we're definitely going to be below that,
and I'll be sniveling into podcast listeners' ears. Like.
Or we could pivot right now and do.
No.
We could still keep the bell thing, but the other person, when I hit the bell, then you have to bark like a dog. He's dressed like a dog and has to bark.
He was
like
in a dog
onesie,
and he was throwing dice at him. It was the Dungeon Dice Monster arc, and the guy kept throwing dice at Joey whenever he tried to talk, and he's like, "You can't talk, you're a dog."
That is bizarre.
It was really
That
funny.
would basically be what our thing is, except I'd be like, "Bing, you can't talk, you're a dog."
Literally, like, shut up.
That's kind of stupid.
You're my dog.
I like the chip.
No,
Yeah,
I like
let's
the
do
chip
the
more.
spicy
I like
thing.
the spicy thing too.
You just have to find the appropriate spiciness.
Yeah.
Well, or it's just like once during the episode, I can get you to shut up and eat a hot chip, and then my point's doomed.
Super hot.
Yeah, my point's doomed.
Yeah, we're not gonna do something so spicy that you gotta blast your way over to the bathroom immediately.
No, nothing's that bad, but like, I just mean, if you watch that segment again,
intentional choice there.
It was a struggle to get through that segment, and then like after the segment ended, I was still dying for another 5 or 10 minutes.
I remember when Kobe ate his chip. I thought it was really funny at first, but then I just felt bad after like 30 seconds because like it was going on. He's just like, he was coughing, he was struggling. I'm like, my man has to cast the game here.
Yeah.
Like somebody help him.
Yeah, I think we definitely go below whatever that was last time.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
I'm down.
That's
Maybe we'll order
right,
some hot ones. Maybe we'll get like the last dab. You can buy that stuff now.
I like the bell idea though. That's fun because it's hanging over them. You never know when it's gonna
exactly.
Come. Is it gonna be at the start? Is it gonna be at the end?
I like that idea. And actually, you can go to Walmart now and buy hot ones wings with 3 of their sauces, including one that's the last dab. Maybe we'll make our producer go out to a Walmart and pick up that, and then we can just have some chicken wings waiting 1 week.
Yeah. You can get a bell at Walmart too, I'm assuming. You can get all kinds of random stuff. Have you ever just done random Walmart trips?
No.
Oh, we did. When we had like summer vacations, when we would go like our big like camping crew, we would do a random like Walmart thing and go find who's buzzing? Check yourself, Mark. You're a dog.
No, I haven't lost a bet. I'm gonna win the bet. I don't even know why we're talking like, oh, we gotta make sure I can eat it. I'm gonna win. I'm worried about you. Okay. Team Liquid's not dropping another game. That was the closest they're gonna get.
You were filled to the brim with confidence after their Immortals game.
If they can't lose that game,
almost 1v2'd them in the base, then ended it in split push.
And like 3 people had to make terrible decisions to lose that game. Yeah. Like Arrow had to not kill people.
Okay. Let's get on with our business now. Article number 2. We also had a call to action for our viewers where Mark was just filled with confidence that we would have so much influence across the League of Legends, global play rate of Senna, Locket Senna, that Freak first found from Lolalytics, looking at some of the win rates with some of the items. And it is a very strong combination to actually build support on Senna and not try and build to be, another damage dealer and getting that extra shield. So it was at 4.18 because I still have the window open.
You haven't refreshed it?
I have not refreshed it. So it was at 4.18. It is now at 4.5 something, Azael. What's the last digit?
It is
just to be accurate.
4.56.
It is now at 4.56. So we have had an increase.
1 in every 200 games. That's the dive effects.
Ding, 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 ding. Well done, viewers. We're going to count it.
I asked it to get to 10%. I think we came a little under the margin there.
Hey, let's see. Can I check
NA? 4% increase.
I wonder if it actually affects. It'd be funny if it was more. Oh, it's 7.58% in NA.
Okay, that's making me feel a little better.
But I did not look at comparing it. Maybe it was just always higher in NA.
I'll look at the 30-day. Let's see.
Did it spike last week on Thursday?
So it went from 5.18% in 30-day to in the 12.5 patch. It's 7.18.
Yeah, and that's all us.
All of us.
I'm feeling a lot better than the global. Because I was going to joke about like, oh man, like either Freak didn't do a good job selling people on the idea and just everyone ignored him, or like no one cares what we think, And I was like, we shouldn't talk about.
Could be both.
Could still be both.
Could be both.
Not that this
not many of our listeners play Senna.
Not that this has been disproven, but maybe we shouldn't talk about builds. No one cares anymore. But actually, now I feel pretty good. We got halfway there.
Yeah.
I didn't really set a time limit on just 1 week turnaround,
Yeah.
So the halfway there in a week is pretty good.
If you go in only the 7-day, it's 8% pick rate.
Yeah.
At this rate, by the time this episode comes out, we'll be at 10%.
And then we just go home. We actually grind some Senna Locket games and influence the data because it's such a small sample size.
I'll build a script. I don't actually need to play these games. I'll just leave my computer running.
Just leveling bot accounts with Senna Locket Senna.
It just runs in there.
That's 0% win rate, but it's high play rate now.
Yeah, that's some dedication. I like it. Some dedication. I mean, people definitely, specific people definitely care a lot about builds. I mean, this weekend we were talking about all the different Ezreal builds. And when the Ezreal had a call fields and inventory, Flowers was like, oh, there's double assassins and lots of backline access, and they're so far ahead, wouldn't actually even blame the Ezreal if he went Shattered Crown for the defensive version.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, okay, well, but since he has call fields, probably going to be the Dustblade, because Dustblade is the most commonly bought for the last year and a half. Call fields mythic for Ezreal's. But then Veigar V2 has been on this like Prowler's Claw crusade, because the Prowler's Claw passive that it adds with the flat lethality is more damage. And he was like, no, it's going to be Prowler's Claw because he's a Cloud9 coach. And it was Berserker. It was Cloud9 doing it. He was like, it's going to happen. And then Berserker never got to finish the item.
That's what I tweeted at him when Vega was tweeting about it. I was like, how do you know he was going Prowler's Claw? He never completed it. He could have just been building 2 different items.
Yeah. But there's hold on. There's a couple other options. Like Ezreal actually has so much versatility. This is one of the funnest champions that does allow people to change their builds a lot. Some champions are a lot more set in stone for best, build paths is clearly best item, but like Ezreal can use Trinity Force, can use Sereldia's for armor penetration along with some of the lethality builds. And, for as far as the lethality mythics, you can even use Eclipse in situations where you want the lifesteal and stuff. So Hega actually has a lot of options. And so that's kind of cool when you're looking at the actual game state and deciding which one is better utilized. And the argument in that one was, of course, the Prowler's Claw with the damage. Plus, it's always funny to see like a range champion with it, just because like
the hop.
Yeah, I mean, I like the invisibility aspect of Duskblade.
It also has a damage proc on attack. That's something that I think a lot of people forget about. Is that like the Night Stalker passive or whatever?
Yeah, it's not every attack though, so that's why it's like. Seconds. But it is good for poking, and that's why Duskblade was the first most used one. Plus, it's kind of hard to talk about really utilizing the invisibility. Sometimes that can be really impactful. I mean, I've played against some that
sometimes it's super good, sometimes it's useless. I mean, the Prowler's Claw, it's interesting, right? Like I'm sure there's some math behind it. I've seen Vega VT tweeting about it a lot. But like it's basically the same win rate with way less pick rate than Duskblade, which usually means that it's like not actually much more powerful. It is much higher win rate than Crown, but so is Duskblade. They're both like 59. It is interesting though. Like I like finding these builds and looking through and trying things out and seeing how they feel. Another build that one of my friends was telling me about was actually Kraken into BT on MF. Because Kraken, if you look up just Kraken as its win rate, it's actually lower than the lethality builds. But like that's the highest win rate 2-item pairing. And so when I had heard about it, I was like, oh, I wonder if that's actually good. Like, one of my friends who was on playtest, I guess, was talking with someone from, I don't know, some analyst.
And I'm assuming you go IE?
Yep. Yep, you just go Kraken BTIE. It's like super heavy AD. It's kind of like the old MF builds where people would sometimes even just go 2 BF swords straight up just for the AP, like the AD on the ulti and everything. And your on hit is still really high that way. But like that 2-item pairing is incredibly high win rate on MF, like 6-7% higher than any other early item build. So that's one that was kind of interesting to find. The Senna Locket, I actually do think is really good. I've played it a lot myself with Aerie. So it is fun kind of finding these builds. I know you were talking about, and you told me about the Demonic Embrace Zac, where you go tank into Demonic Embrace. I've tried that a lot. Like all those builds I've tried and absolutely vouch for and think they're super strong. So I do think you can get a pretty big advantage sometimes by digging through some of the stats and finding these different builds that are advantageous. It's not always going to win you the games, but it can be these couple percent swings that can be the difference between climbing or not.
And they make you feel good. Like this is one of the things that I've always liked about League and new patches is it makes you feel good and smart if like you can find something that is a low play, right? So you feel like, oh my God. So everyone else doesn't realize this. So like the feeling of I'm abusing something or like I know something that like is not widespread really is satisfying for people because you're combining like the satisfaction of like something novel plus something powerful and successful. And so you just, you have a sense of fulfillment when you find something like that. That's one of my favorite parts about preseason or new patches.
The best part is when you build it and people think you're trolling and then you get to get in a keyboard warrior fight. That's what I really live for.
That's the best
I gotta find some hipster ass stuff so that way when people are like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, what are you doing? Look at the play rates.
This is spoken like a true ranked player because Mark does not actually go through ranked games and actually take the time to type it out. You type it out outside of game and you actually invest more time in that. If you're like grinding games, it is so detrimental to waste time trying to educate people. I've come.
Says who?
Says me. Because even if I'm educated,
I work at a low level. All right, I work from the base up. I educate the people around me. I don't try and go from the top down. All right, I'm working in my community of 9 other people in this game that I'm educating.
Even if you're educating the people that are on your team, there's no guarantee they're ending up on your team next game. And so if you just spend all this time raging and
campaigns.
talking to them and then finally like teaching someone that what they did is wrong, which is what so many people want to do for some reason in solo queue, is teach you how you're wrong. Guess what? Next game, they're on the opponent team. And if you actually did teach them, then maybe they use it against you.
And even if they're on your team, they absolutely did not listen because no one has ever convinced someone that they're wrong in solo queue.
My grassroots rage campaigns work phenomenally.
Alternatively, you can take my approach, which is if someone types ever, you mute them. But even if they're not typing to me, they're getting muted.
Enjoy your one-person echo chamber.
I ping. I don't type.
What if it's funny? What if it's completely?
If you make Azael,
if they're like inflammatory, right?
If they make Azael laugh
towards me. But I just don't even like seeing my teammates flaming each other. I just get tilted by it because I'm like, these people aren't even playing the game. What are these idiots doing?
See, if Azael do the same, if you make Azael laugh, he'll mute you because he's like, you're not playing the game. We're not here for comedy club, all right? I'm here to win. That's how much
I won't mute you if you're funny. I'll definitely mute you if you're flaming each other.
That's funny though, because I too, when he first said it, imagine it as like Azael has everyone chat restricted to one sentence. you
get one sentence.
You get one. Yeah.
You have one message, and he's just like, boom, restricted. You're muted.
You got
Azael, big
no
fan.
matter what it is.
Stop fanboying and play the game. No matter what you say, find
Azael, you're my favorite caster. I love
muted.
you. Shut up.
It's like Eminem, you only get one shot.
I gotta remember to stop hitting the desk though. I've done it 2 times this episode, so I feel bad. But since I'm calling myself out, I'm keeping myself accountable.
We need a side table.
I promise there will be no more desk hits this episode.
I'm always waiting for the day where you or Flowers are casting and you break the desk.
They did.
Well, I know the front fell off one time, but I'm talking about full on collapse, like the table cracks.
Like we actually have a Thor hammer through the middle.
Well, because Flowers, when he's going at it, he'll start slapping it, and you like to do the lean on the desk. So I'm just waiting. Someday there's going to be an epic crack, and then Mike's going to go silent.
I'm gonna saw the bottom a little bit. It's just enough to get it started. So next time Flowers
he punches it, just smashes.
It's gonna be when we're try casting. It's gonna be me and
Flowers. Fall on me.
He's gonna be pounding. I'm gonna be jumping. You're gonna be standing there like, oh shit.
All right. Champions Queue finished up for the preseason split or whatever they're calling it. I forget what it is. Preseason Rumble, something like that. Split one. And EG, 3 of the top 4 members. I gotta say, I'm impressed. Jojopyun, he's the big boss. He finished first place, but Kaori as well as Surdy, S-R-D-T-Y.
Yeah, the 2 Academy
Surdy.
solo laners.
Yep, they were number 2, number 3 and number 4 on Olay.
Oh, the AD carry and top laner?
Yes.
Olay was number 2. Sven number 5. So it is actually really cool. I liked seeing who was up there grinding. It's also interesting to see who wasn't up there grinding. Some of the teams, where you're not really seeing anyone. I didn't see a lot of TSM members in there. Some of the teams have a lot of players who are really spamming solo queue, or rather champions queue. And I do think that there is a pretty big benefit to it, right? Like, yes, there is a mental tax to doing more try-hard games as opposed to maybe just brain off doing some solo queue with no comms. But I do really think that there's a lot of value in it, and it's cool to see the teams that were really taking it serious and spamming a lot of games and also getting rewarded for it, because it's if this was just solo queue instead, I mean, Jojopyun just got $12,000 for doing what he was already going to be doing, and you get the brand building opportunities and stuff, because if you're doing well, people are going to pay attention, right? People who have never heard of Carry or Surdy before, they are going to be oh, I wonder who these guys are, right? You have the opportunity to get more people to check out your stream, or maybe more teams are going to kind of consider scout you for their teams and things. So I think it's awesome. And I think Champions Queue has been one of the best things to happen to the region in a long time.
100% agree. And I've started streaming it a couple days a week. It is so fun to watch them. And, the different players, especially the ones at the top, get really into it, and they'll come in chat and start arguing about the game. And actually there have been some pretty funny debates that have spread over to social media a lot of them surrounding RJS, and they had a really long discussion with like Arrow and Core JJ and getting everybody in there on how different bottom lanes are supposed to go and pushing and
how to solve quadratic equations.
We've talked many times about how the possibility of different types of reality shows could revolve around the LCS. I feel like this is another iteration. Where there's a lot of entertainment factor to be had there. There's a lot of education, but there's also drama. There's also intrigue. There's also mystery. It's definitely a fun time.
Put them all in a house and record them all playing Champions queue. Yeah. They have to sit beside each other. You know, when you queue up and you get on the team, you gotta go sit with each other.
And then we have challenges throughout the week that they have to complete outside of the game.
Impossible level challenge. You have to play with me on your team.
All right, that's enough of non-LCS related stuff. Let's get into it. We got a question. What?
Just slap the desk there, Mark.
I reprimanded myself for slapping the desk, and now you.
I'm a bad boy. I don't care. I'll slap any desk.
I just want the viewers. I just want the viewers because sometimes the camera's moving around. It's looking at Azael.
It wasn't Kobe. He's innocent.
That was not me. That was Mark.
Yep. All right.
Kat Largent.
Also, is it
Largent?
Is it that bad? I'm gonna actually check the comments
4 days ago
episode to see if it's that egregious.
Question for discussion. Now that we've gotten a full round robin in the regular season to see all the rosters, if you could choose only one of the non-retired players that are at McDonald's for spring split, Jizuke, Jensen, Ignar, etc., to sign on to any team for summer, who would it be, which team, and why?
I think Jensen, TSM. I mean, I think a lot of people are thinking that TSM is just doing awful. We talked about this a while ago. I will say Takeover actually looked pretty good, to be fair to him. But like when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, I just feel like Reggie is not the kind of guy to sit back and do nothing while his team is kind of like the laughingstock of the league, right? TSM has never been this bad before. I feel like it's an easy jump to make to say, all right, sign one of these big stars, sign Jensen, who's in known quantity. He's won a bunch of titles in the LCS. We got to get out of last. He's going to help us do it.
So I 100% am on board with Reggie would want to do it. The reason I don't think it'll be easy is that Jensen might not want to do it.
Yeah.
Because the rumors going around at the beginning of the season also were part of the friction around him not getting teams or around some of the players not getting teams is that these really high caliber players, prestigious players, don't want to play for shit teams. And guess what? They're 10th place. Like, they're actually shit. I hate to say it, you know, it's rarely been said, but TSM is literally 10th place in both leagues, Academy as well.
Do you think there's some like convincing that could be done though? Because I feel like your restrictions might relax a little bit if you're Jensen and you haven't been able to play for a while, and B, at least you're playing with last season's MVP, you're playing with Huni, you're playing with Tactical. Like there are known quantities there, so I almost feel like you would have to think that you could make this team better.
Yeah, there are some things where players will often also say, okay, I'll come play if you also get X player. Yeah. And so it could be some sort of...
Says one in the question.
Yep.
Only get one.
True. I'm not sticking to the rules, but if it's in his contract, then, legality. So, but I do think that Reggie would definitely want to, as evidence, as the tweet that everyone's has referenced 1,000 times and makes fun of him. You know, he, as funny and memeable as that is, it came from a real place of Reggie's talking about, I will do anything to not be a loser. Like Reggie is a very competitive person, and he came from League of Legends. I knew him as a very young kid, you know, making this team, making this brand with his brother, Dan Din. And it means so much to him to be competitive and to be the top team. You know, they initially built their brand on winning so many tournaments. So I definitely agreed that he wants to change some more stuff. Yep. And he is always wants to be hands-on and continue changing. I don't know if they'll be able to get Jensen, but that was also my thought as well. I was like, oh my God.
I think everyone's got that.
I assume he's going to come back. I do think if they can't get Jensen, then Jizuke makes a lot of sense. And I think you can you will be able to get Jizuke. So one of those two, I'm pretty sure will come in.
I mean, to be fair, Jizuka had a better year than Jensen last year in the actual LCS, right? I think that Jensen did well internationally, and that kind of really like boosted the market. Plus, Jensen has been more consistent across his career. But Jizuke was second in MVP voting, right? Like people kind of forget, I feel like, how good he was last year.
And if you're a 10th place team and you just need more of a direction, I feel like in some sense, Jizuke doesn't, like, he's doing the same things no matter what. I think Jensen wants to play the game more of a certain way, like him and his jungler do this, and then they spread it around the map, and it's more about like how a top team should play. But I think Jizuke is like, I'll just stomp lane and you can come gank for me.
He'll win you some games.
Yeah, he'll win you some games. My choice for this one, dark horse maybe, solo Dignitas.
What's funny is whenever solo comes up, I'm like, sure, put him in. Because whenever that man has been picked up on a team, even if he has not been playing in academy, not been playing in anything, it's like slap a solo in there and your bottom team is bumped up at least a few ranks.
I feel like Dignitas is a pretty decent team, honestly. And there's just, I think Fake God, as much as I like him, has been struggling a lot. And that's a potential upgrade you could find to get some more stability in your top lane, because they clearly want to play through bot for the most part. And, you know, solo has usually been a weak side player. I think, like, stylistically, it makes sense. There's a number of ways that it could help shore up a weakness right now for Dignitas, who are kind of a bubble playoff team. Like, they could end up top 6. They could end up just missing. And that could be a move that helps them actually make it into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Is he still playing a lot? I haven't heard anything
I
about
really
solo.
don't think so.
I don't know.
He has not been in Champions Queue.
Yeah.
Or at least any of the games I've watched. I've watched a bunch of them. Have not seen him in.
He tweeted recently.
Haven't seen him in the Discord, so he did. What did?
Yeah, I think he tweeted, like, or maybe someone necroed a post of his about, like, put me in or something.
Really?
I forget which game it was. It was some game where I think it was after the Fake God Malphite game. Someone either he tweeted it or someone necroed him.
No, there's a big difference there.
There's a big difference. I'm not sure. I'm gonna check his Twitter real quick.
Yeah, Dignitas has been struggling for sure. I mean, that is an interesting one, but maybe there's some other top laners that they could look at as well.
I was trying to think of other top laners who weren't signed that are McDonald'sing it, I guess, as the comment put it.
One I will say that has been active and has been playing and doing well in Champions Queue is Sven Skaren also for jungle. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of options there.
He necroed his own tweet, actually. He had a tweet on February 3rd, 2020, where he said free agent, by the way. And then he tweeted the 26th, a couple weeks ago. It's about that time.
That's very funny. I think it was like Dokla as well that I saw tweeting, kind of like flaming other top laners in the LCS. Something like, is there only 2 or 3 human top laners in the whole LCS or something? I was like, whoa, like
Dokla's been killing it in Academy. He's actually, you could argue, the best.
He didn't kill it in the LCS though, to be fair.
3 or 4 years ago.
I know. I'm not saying he can't do better now.
It's time to bring back Big Dokes.
Big Dokes. I actually enjoyed watching him because he picked different stuff. Like he brought up the York and everything. It'll be interesting to see if teams do mix it up going into the second round robin, obviously. Well, I guess we're already 1 week in. There's not a lot of time left. So if you're trying to make a push towards playoffs and everything, now is the time to make some moves for sure. Yeah. Team Liquid, they're still on top. You guys were touching on it a little bit earlier. Had a pretty back and forth game against 100 Thieves. The Immortals game, I think, was where Mark might have been sweating a bit there. As Revenge very nearly kind of just took that game through side lane on Graves. And it feels like Immortals are kind of getting more of an identity on just like believing in the Revenge picks, playing these carries, and he's hard committing to side lanes, and that's kind of becoming the Immortals thing, which is kind of cool to see that from the preseason messaging. They're like, we believe in Revenge and he's going to help build our team, and then they were coming out of the gates looking awful, and it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have, but now they're actually looking a lot better, and it's him playing his kind of play style. It's cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to focus on that game for both of these teams.
Yep.
Because from the Immortal side, I loved it. And it is an example of one of these teams really backing up what they're saying. They say something and they stick to it. They don't flip-flop a week in or something, Mark. Or Azael, who was very down on Immortals, and we were trying to convince him.
I was unconvinced
of the possibilities. I just think it's a very strong path for them. That being said, we also have to acknowledge the flop at the finish line.
Yeah.
Where they were so disorganized. I started almost crying as I was watching them going in different directions in the base. And I was like, no, I've been in this situation in solo queue where you're like, you're right there. And like your Ari's going off to die by the top inhibitor tower. And someone's over here is hitting the Nexus. And then someone over here is trying to finish off this kill. And you're just like, do one thing. Like, oh no, if we had, and you could see it on their faces after the game, they were like, so devastated. Oh my God, that one hurt from the Immortal side.
I feel like a lot of people that I saw were flaming Arrow at the end because like he potentially could have killed some people and he hit the Nexus instead.
Yeah, I mean, they were all so split on that communication.
Yeah, but like the reason it ended up in that situation is because the rest of his team seemed like they were just super tunneled on ending the game too. Like PoE just ulted straight north, like just away from his entire team and just like separated himself. Revenge ran into melee range of like 3 people and killed himself. Destiny's on Leona like, wait for me, guys. And Arrow's like zoned from a Victor ult. And it's like, why didn't the 2 people who got too close just kite back with the Leona and then you 5-man fight and just went like, it was so, like they also could have just gone Baron. They didn't need to force that. There were so many other decisions that like, I saw Arrow getting flamed and I was like, man, I don't think Arrow was the one who...
There was a lot of things.
There was a lot of things everyone did.
Basically, everyone did it wrong because no one did it together, right? And that's like where you talk about it's better to do the wrong thing as 5 than everyone have their own idea and try to do their own thing.
Well, I say they did do the same thing as 5. All of their call was, everyone try and hit the Nexus your own way. I think that was it. And PoE's like, all right, I'll ult over here with my Lich Bane. And Arrow's like, I'll run over here. And then they just all died.
He went literally up by the inhibitor tower.
We started trying to kite. I don't know, man.
Yeah, the only way that they would have all been doing the same thing is if the call was just everybody scramble, basically.
Everyone lose your mind.
Is what it looked like. That is one where I really want one of the listen-ins, but we'll probably never get that.
Yeah.
A mic checks on the most vulnerable points of teams. I think they should get a kind of veto vote on that because there's some things that you really would not want to, to reveal to public scrutiny, basically. But it would be very interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe you could do like a pass and see if there's anything bad in there. And if there's not, then get it out there. I would love to see it. I mean, I will say also the Shyvana looked incredibly useless, I thought. So it's one of those things where I felt like this was... like Bwipo, and I don't want him to stop trying things because I actually absolutely love that. And, some of the things he has done are really good. Their last loss was him on the Viego top where it looked giga useless. And then this game, I actually thought the Shyvana was not very useful and couldn't match side lane. Didn't look like a big threat in team fight. Like it was kind of fine. And maybe Bwipo thinks that like, hey, it was just more of a play thing and made some mistakes. But it was interesting to see it come out. I didn't feel like it had any impact on the game. And I think that was maybe one of the reasons that TL almost lost. Because to me, this almost lost and their last loss were really kind of like top lane picks in a lot of ways.
That's something I actually really wanted to jump on because I saw a lot of social media flaming the Shyvana pick.
Yeah.
And I really hope that there's a different tack that you can take with your criticism. And I would love people to shift from flaming Team Liquid for picking Shyvana because some people are like, you idiots, this game's so bad, why'd you pick Shyvana? That's so turbo useless. He made several mistakes pretty early on in his lane, and I would be way happier if people were flaming, oh my God, you played poorly, because he's like, even he knows, and he's like, yeah, all right, I definitely scuffed that one. Because think about what this team used to be. Do you want Team Liquid? And I know you already said you don't want this.
Yeah.
And I'm posing this to viewers because, like, just think about it a second for yourselves. If you want to, if you're out here flaming the Shyvana pick instead of the Shyvana play, which was not perfect, do you want Team Liquid to revert to same old stock standard, boring,
blind
scaling,
top every
exact same pick ban every single game? Hell no. Nobody wants that, okay? You know why there was so much hype around this year of LCS is because we have so many different strategies and people are actually trying things.
Yep.
People are believing in different possibilities of strategy. So I actually was kind of disappointed that I saw so much flame at the Shyvana pick rather than the Shyvana play, because Shyvana is actually quite strong, and especially because I've played a bunch of it in jungle right now. I think it's also a flex pick, could be really good to be able to use in jungle. I'm just saying I have really liked the new Team Liquid with all these angles, with Bwipo, with Hansama, with Bjergsen, and the exciting factor that he has brought to this team. This is not your grandma's League of Legends. It's not your old grandma's Team Liquid, you know, that you're used to with the same old picks and bans. I don't want it to go back to that.
I agree. Some of the things that the Shyvana did particularly poorly, and I think why people, you can kind of see, like, you didn't really watch the game or you don't understand the game. It's like he almost solo killed the Graves, because and he talked about this in the post-game interview where he's like, hey, you know, like, Shyvana is one of the few tanks you can actually pick in the Graves, and you like eventually get all-in threat, and you can actually control and contest the push a little bit more, and then you become way more useful in team fights and stuff. And like, that's how it went until he killed himself under the turret because he tanked too many turret shots. And like, that was also the time where gank was coming up there, and he messed up that person's time as well. And then in team fights, he was like, oh, I shouldn't be ulting in. I should be kiting back and using E. And it's not even like he's just ulting in. There are fights where he is ulting in and surrounding himself by 5 people, and the rest of his team is on Dragon. Like,
and he's building Warmogs. Like, he wasn't even pure resistances, right?
Yeah, like, if you just watch his game, he played it pretty terribly. And I'm not flaming Bwipo, obviously he's a great player, but like, that was not a good Shyvana game. It's like, the pick can be fine, but if you watch what he's doing in the game and you think jumping in the middle of 5 people as your team does Dragon is like a good call, like, clearly Shyvana is not primary engaged. You don't just yeet yourself in there because you get peeled so easily.
I do want to point out that the team fight that they did win in the most overwhelming manner on the bottom lane was when he used his ult to peel back to the Xin Zhao, and they killed the Xin Zhao, and then they press forward and kill the rest of the team. And so he very well does know
what he should have been doing.
Exactly.
And there was even one in the top lane where he brush camped and killed, like, solo killed Arrow basically because, hey, I'm a tank, but I can also kill squishies when I don't jump into 5 people.
And that was late in the game too, and that was very close. And it was also only possible because Arrow earlier broke his stopwatch by fattening during it. If he had
it was a messy game, all right?
He would have lived.
It happened twice in that game.
If he had his stopwatch.
Yeah.
But yeah, just wanted to kind of bring that conversation more in line with execution rather than, you know, trying to use some of these strategies, because I do think it is strong.
I agree that, like, you know, and like you said, I wasn't saying this, like, I actually love that he's playing a lot of different stuff, but I will say, to play devil's advocate a little bit, is that I think that some of these niche picks are much less forgiving. You can actually make more mistakes on some of the, like, S tier meta picks, and that's why a lot of times they are S tier meta picks, is because you can have a mistake where you just like, oh, oops, I overdove and took a couple tower shots on Camille, but like, guess what, I'm Camille, so now I have 2 items and I just one shot you in the side lane, right? You know, like, there's more of that ability to kind of like be forgiven or easier to execute in some ways. Plus, that is part of the argument that players have, is that because they get so many games on these champions, they know exactly how to team fight, right? If he was playing a champion that he had 100 games on, well, he probably wouldn't be diving in, to your point, and killing himself in the 5v5. He would be peeling back and playing how, you know, he's supposed to be playing it. So that is one of the kind of like weaknesses, quote unquote, of playing a lot of different stuff, is that sometimes you aren't as comfortable in every single situation. You don't know your limits, and you don't know exactly how you should play out in every situation. But it has been an absolute boon for TL to have Bwipo playing all this different stuff. And I think practicing it now in spring, practicing it all year long is the way to do it, because come playoffs, come international play, they're going to be a much more diverse team, and they're going to be able to bring that out as a threat, you know, and not just be so predictable as we've seen a lot of our top teams be in the past.
Oh yeah, I just remembered, even though this was a little bit earlier, but you come out on the Warmogs, like Shyvana also gets, since she gets so much flat resistances from the passive and from getting dragons also, it actually is effective.
Warmogs is good. I'm just saying he should have been kiting back, not diving in if you're going Warmogs to get used. Like, if you're going to go for all-in fights, like, Randuin's and stuff is way better. But if you want to play it slow and get used to the regen, then Warmogs is really strong. Plus, it's amazing in his side lane against Graves.
Yeah, it actually, because and I did the math, and it was like 5 years ago. So obviously things have changed, and Warmogs even is a bit different. But the flat health, this one being so much more than any of the other items, it's actually way more efficient for your durability, because each point of resistance gains more effectiveness the more HP that you have. And so you have this basically line up the middle of efficiency where you're trying to balance health purchases with the resistance purchases. I just kind of want to re-emphasize that because it has gotten harder in League of Legends to get health.
Yep.
And so the premium on defense stats has kind of shifted a little bit where it's way easier to get resistances now. And you more quickly approach the scenario in a lot of builds where you are over invested on resistances and don't have as much flat health. So just for tank people out there, consider even the rune shard that is scaling health is actually really efficient also. If you incorporate other little ways of getting bits of health into the builds, because so much of the items are focused on resistances now.
Yeah, and for people who know a little bit of the math but don't think about it enough, like there's technically no effective HP drop off on extra points of resist. Each point of resist is like, I think it's 1% effective HP, or is that
yeah, it's in the damage reduction.
Yeah, the damage reduction technically falls off, but the effective HP doesn't. But pen gets more value if you overstack and don't have appropriate ratio of health to actual resist. It's that makes it that way, because otherwise you could technically resist stack and it wouldn't matter.
It does still, because there's a difference with damage reduction. Incorporating the value of healing and lifesteal in any form where you're going to gain HP back
which with the Warhog's passive, you mean, right?
Is going to see efficiency gains.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't necessarily
drop off. It doesn't technically drop off, but it
have diminishing returns. But in the damage reduction, flat part does, if that's what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's all just about how you're trying to play the game, right? Warmogs is really good, I think, if you're playing non-committal and like randoms and things like that. If you're going to go full 100-0 all in, it's going to be more effective. It's generally how I think about it.
And we're super far down a tangent, but it's another good time to shout out the active of Randuin's, since it got changed. Is actually good for peeling too, because you can apply it on carries that aren't even hitting you and are hitting your teammates. So
absolutely,
also good.
All right, out of the rabbit hole, climb back up to Cloud9. The other team tied at the top of the standings with Team Liquid. They'll also be playing this week. I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit later. But first, they got a 2-0 week. Look pretty clean doing it too. We had Golden Guardians and EG.
I think they've been really, really good. I thought Blaber was a monster this week. I thought he was actually so good. Like his Volibear game in particular, he just absolutely ran the show. In that game early on, and I know you were talking about this in the cast, but I was thinking this too, where I was just like, ooh, he's getting too many of these kills. Like, this is this is not actually the best, because I play a fair bit of Volibear, and you definitely have those games, especially when you're going tank Volibear, and it's like you have 5 early kills and you feel like a god, and then everyone hits 3 items and you're like, oh, I'm useless.
I'm kited.
It was so funny, because I also got so many Twitter replies, because like in that game I'm like, oh man, he's crushing it, but look at this big bounty on his head, because he literally got all 5 of the first kills.
Yeah,
maybe even the first 6.
Just don't die.
6, yeah,
it's easy.
And I was like, well, so like you're gonna give that bounty up eventually, so you just have to think about like where you're gonna give it up, or like the team has to be ready for the slingshot and gold and blah blah blah, or Blaber could just be a Chad and just never die and go legendary. And then we're like, ha. And I was like, ha ha ha, right? And then he literally just never dies and goes legendary. And we're like, all right, Blaber. And he got really close, and he had a stopwatch in one of the dragon fights where they won it with 3 members remaining and only a sliver of health on each member. That was just like, oh my God. Cloud9 is really, really making this clash with Team Liquid this upcoming weekend into an all-out like brawl. Like, this is going to be so exciting to see these two teams clash at this kind of pinnacle of play that they're both kind of going to.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting too, because this is maybe getting a little too far ahead of ourselves, but like when you start looking at MVPs, this split with
I don't think it's that far ahead of yourself anymore. We're 5 out of 8 weeks done.
Yeah, because there's a super week to end the season as well. So like you're probably looking at a Team Liquid or Cloud9 player, honestly speaking. It feels like the outside chances of like a 100 Thieves player, an EG player, or like some of these FlyQuest.
I don't think any of
player
them have been consistent enough in the early split to really, unless they're just like absolutely turbo stomp the end and TL C9 fall off. Like, at least off the top of my head, it feels like there's been too many inconsistencies.
I would see especially people who use the rubric of most valuable single player to their team, making arguments for people like River, where
or Afro maybe.
Yeah, the team is going to be in ruins without this single player, you know?
I think FlyQuest could get some nods, but I feel
those like the dark horse third person on the ballot rather than someone who's really going
to. And River, I don't even think they could win it anymore. Like I don't even think he could win anymore. I
Unless
think
they go on a
has
run.
Been too bad lately.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So FlyQuest, you'd say like Takui,
or maybe I could see like if you're talking about judging it through the perspective, and I don't do this, I just do who I think is the best player in the league. But if you're going, which team would be the most like fall off the most without
if
this
you pull
guy,
the play away,
then
most
you could make an argument for Afro too. I think because like as much as some people I know like are not like believers in Afro as an individual as a player, even the detractors of Afro, when I talk to them, I'm like, yeah, but look at how much better
every team he's on.
Every team is when he's on them, and people can't really argue against it. And even the ADs individually, like how much better was Johnson when he played with him? How much better was Neo when he played with him? Like when he plays with these guys, they look like everyone talks about them. Wow, like look at their team fighting. Wow, look how good they are. You know, and it's like, well, yeah, and then they don't look as good when they're not with Afro. Like that is the Afro effect, I think, is that he is such a veteran and he's so intelligent about like how to set up the game and how to actually enable his teammates, that I do think he adds a tremendous amount, even if individually he's not always the flashiest.
So there's definitely some dark horses like Afro and River and whoever else will crop up by the end of the season, but it feels otherwise like it's a TL or C9 player. And that's why I think the matchup this weekend is also really hyphy, because you wonder, like, is this going to stick in people's minds if Blaber goes in there
and gets turbo stomped by
Santorin,
Santorin,
or he does the same thing. If he runs over Team Liquid and hands them their next loss, and that helps them get first place over Team Liquid because of this, like this is a chance to have like a big part of your resume in the MVP voting. It's probably Blaber and Summit off C9 who people are leaning towards.
Do you think people are going to steal votes from each other? This is the other thing, is I wonder if too many people on TL and C9 steal votes from each other, and then the like dark horse becomes an actual legitimate threat. Because it's like, as much as people say Summit, I think Blaber is deserving of votes. Yep. People have been really hyping up Berserker as being like the perfect man. And, you know, he could get some votes. If you end up cannibalizing too many votes on your team because you have too many good players, sometimes some weird things can happen there. Because TL, I could see arguments for Bwipo. I think Santorin's having an incredible season. Like, CoreJJ like, wasn't there at the whole time, so maybe he gets overlooked a little bit. But, like, you can make arguments for a lot of people.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's why I'm interested to see where it goes. I think I wouldn't include Berserker just because there's not a huge influence on the early game as great as he is in mid to late game, where I think Blaber's...
But do you think some people will include him?
Maybe. But I also think the people that are going to be cannibalizing on Cloud9, Team Liquid will cannibalize, and I just don't think there's enough thrust behind the other teams.
Yeah.
So I'm not too worried about the cannibalization aspect, but I do think it's interesting.
Mark doesn't care about cannibals.
Cannibals matter too, Mark.
I just want to talk about Blaber. This has all been set up for Blaber. I've been setting up for Blaber for like, he's going to win another MVP. He's going to win 3 spring MVPs in a row. It's happening.
I saw your tweet about that. And then the Tim was saying you stole it or something.
I don't know. I forget.
But it wasn't that original of a thought, but I liked it.
Yeah, I was like, I think I stole it from a Reddit comment.
The one where Tim was also getting into it. He was like, you stole my idea.
I always just find that funny when it's like, no, everyone thought the same thing.
Yeah, it's like Blaber's going to win another MVP maybe after he just turbo stomped on Blaber. Everyone thought that.
Yeah.
And he was obviously kidding. But I think it is interesting how influential Blaber is. Someone would also DM me. They're like, who do you think is the greatest jungler in NA of all time? Is it Xmithie or Blaber? It feels like the two people. And I was like, well, Xmithie had a longer career, but
that's Xmithie.
Xmithie, excuse me.
Well, Meteos.
I don't think a long enough period at the top. His highs were up there.
I agree, not anymore.
Yeah, I think we've gone through that discussion a couple of times in the past, and
so Blaber has surpassed Meteos. Then
came up with Xmithie as
yeah, he has more international stuff, but it's also an 8-year career you're stacking it up against. Like his runs with Team Liquid were not until he'd been in the league since season 3.
Yeah,
even season 2 he was playing. So Blaber's had what, 4-ish years, starting around 2018, 2019.
I feel like more than that now. Wasn't he in when was the first scouting grounds?
Well, he didn't start a game, and this is when he was subbing with Sven.
He was
until
bouncing back
2019, and I don't think he was the full blown starter until 2020, and that's when he won his first MVP.
Yeah.
So realistically, he has about a 4-year career right now.
I feel
he's gonna have 3 MVPs almost.
If you're talking about just regionally, like I already can buy that Blaber is just like the best North American jungler ever, just regionally. But if you're talking about like, you know, you're counting like, you know, international, and I know you're giving me a face. You're a big Xmithie.
Put some respect in Jake's name, all right?
but I just think like when you look at actually, so I'd have to look at the win rates and stuff. But like Blaber's stats in the league have just been absurd, right? Like as far as win rate, as far as like, you know, every stat that just shows like domination as a jungler, like he's like #1 on by like a million miles. I do think like if you want to talk about like who's the greatest kind of like in bigger picture, I don't think anyone can touch Xmithie right now, because like Xmithie made both the MSI finals. Xmithie like, you know, has done more internationally than Blaber has by a lot, and I think those do matter. I think being able to show up against the world's best competition matters a lot, and Xmithie was able to do it. Blaber hasn't. So to me, like until Blaber like kind of gets that feather in his cap, where like Blaber makes a deep run in an international tournament, like Xmithie has a couple times, then I don't think he's really in the conversation as far as that goes. But if you're talking purely regional play, I think you could already make the argument, and I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I definitely, as you stated, I'm on the other side. For sure, even regional, I think for sure Xmithie. I will say for your argument, one of the best tactics that I think you could go for would be to highlight the strength of the jungle position this year in the LCS, because I do think it is extremely high.
Best it's ever been.
And at the beginning of this split, that was one of our main topics, was like, and especially once River came over, and the jungle position and top lane positions, I feel like are the two most stacked positions in our league currently. And I think that would be a good tack to go on, but I would still not buy it and stand.
I was on the other side of
the
debate. I'm a huge Blaber fan. I think he's carried more games during this period of time, because obviously he doesn't have the same like.
They're very different styles.
They're very different styles. There's as far apart as you could possibly imagine, but Blaber runs games over so much harder than anyone in North America ever has over a long period of time and stuff. Like. You gotta look up some stats. Here's some stats. If you look up most kills and assists at 15, like basically ganking time windows and skirmishes and stuff like that, Blaber has like 4 of the top 5 splits. Like he's absolutely insane. He's done it with different mid laners, different teammates all around him every single time. He's just like the best early game jungler we've ever seen. I think you could maybe argue that there's different strengths and weaknesses. Like Xmithie's very clutch. He always makes great team fighting plays. He executes win cons
really well by covering lanes.
He doesn't really int games. Blaber has the crabber meme for a reason, you know, like he does do some troll shit sometimes, but like I think you start like getting into some pretty fine details there.
But I think it's amazing that it's even like a conversation this early in his career when you talk about longevity, right? Like he has been so dominant in those years that I do think you can make the argument. We're not going to come to an agreement here. Kobe's clearly on the other side.
He's going to pull some stat up in a second here, I'm sure.
But I mean, I think Blaber has been outstanding, right? And I do think it's cool to look at that and see, because when I dug into this, I don't know when it was, like last year, year before, whatever, when I was kind of thinking about this, I came to similar conclusions that you did. That
it's like 65% win rate, 70% win rate. Like, how is this possible?
He actually is just like at the top of like every category as far as like early game dominance as a jungler, and it's been really, really fun to watch. But you can have your quick rebuttal, but then we probably should move forward, because
this is the last word, and then we're all going to shut. No, I won't respond.
Or we could just brush over it, because you guys already know the route that I'm going to go down with Xmithie. And even if you're saying regional, he's got 6 regional titles as well.
He does. That's true. He's won a lot.
It's extremely impressive, and that's just LCS. I keep going back in the days before LCS even existed. For all you youngins,
put some respect.
We
on
had
IEM,
something called we had IEMs. We also had team solo mid invitationals. And he won 4 of those, which previous to LCS were some of the biggest and most watched online plays as well.
He's good.
He's definitely
else is pretty good.
Let's go.
FlyQuest actually had a
seamless transition.
There you
know
go.
who was never on that team? Jake.
Who wasn't even born yet? Takui. So FlyQuest had a good bounce back week. They got slammed in Super Week, and it was looking rough. I remember walking out of the studio on Sunday. seeing some of the FlyQuest guys get interviewed, I was like, oh, you know. And then I was doing some content with Jose over the weekend, and you could tell it was a little bit rough, rough go that they had, because they got stomped in 3 straight games. And then coming back, they actually had a pretty strong bounce back weekend. And again, I think have solidified themselves at least as like, you know, an upper team, right? Like, again, I don't think anyone was really convinced, or at least we weren't convinced that they were like going to be actually a first place team or anything. But they are really, really solid, and they're not just like going away after one bad week.
I think it's been impressive to see them bounce back, like you said. I think I'm not sure if I'm putting them upper pack or middle of the pack, because
what's your definition? I think they're like a 4th or 5th place team.
I don't think that. Here's the problem with FlyQuest that I run into when I talk about them, and I'm not trying to be negative and like be a jerk, but you know, in the standings they're currently above.
They're gonna be.
They're currently above 100 Thieves in EG, and if you put them in a best of 5 at the end of the season,
So
do
5th.
I think they're gonna beat them? No. So I think they're a 5th place team, which is, like I said, probably more middle of the pack.
Yep.
And that's why it feels bad to say, because I think they're vastly overperforming expectations. They have qualities about them that allow them to beat teams. Like
our aggregate was 10th. For
yeah,
FlyQuest. You guys both have them 10th. I had them a little bit higher, but our aggregate was 10th. If they're 5th, that's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. And they can beat top teams when top teams don't play correctly. And they're a hard team to beat because it feels like they're always in it. They've had a ton of comeback victories. And sometimes it's easy to detract from those and be like, oh, well, the other team threw. And it's like, well, of course, the other team that was ahead had to throw for them to win. But to be a team that you actually need to close out cleanly against, because they will catch those throws every time, is a skill set. Like, Fake God Malphite alting Nautilus was not very great, but you know, Johnson played that team fight out on Aphelios incredibly well to then kill Blue when the Victor goes in and like get his damage out. Like, they still play well, and that's why it feels bad when I feel like there's always this but at the end of their when you talk about them.
And I do think a decent amount of that comes from having, you know, players like Afromu on your team that are always looking to be able to shot call and give direction in times that are uncomfortable, where you are behind, and being ready to pounce on comeback opportunities like that. Mentioned earlier the MSI run of this CLG team that had Xmithie and Afromu on it. Yep. You like how I wove that in?
I see that.
Why pay the big bucks?
They literally came back from 3 inhibitors down versus RNG, who were
if Kobe can
undefeated.
bring this point up, he will bring this point up every time. If there's a way to bring up the triple inhib base defense, he brings it up.
Was there someone that didn't doubt them, Mark?
But I was weaving.
Do you remember?
I was actually highlighting that I wove Jake into it.
I know.
Xmithie.
Yeah.
But you know, we can incorporate all these.
We had to weave something.
All these great parts. Yeah. Well done, boys. That's it.
Excellent job, chaps.
Oh yeah.
I also wanted to highlight. I thought Josedeodo had a great week, and I think just overall, he's been putting in a lot of work. He's like 1,400 plus LP in solo queue. He was relatively high as well in champions queue. Like, he's grinding both of those. He's doing very well in both of those, and he's performing and having one of his best splits on stage as well. His quadra kill on Lee Sin, I know it's always one of those things where it's like, oh, who cares? He just last hit some people. But the replay of that fight, he played that fight so well. Like, he actually played that almost perfect. The first time through, I watched the fight. I was like, that's cool. He got a quadra. And then they showed it. And I think it was from ProView. Like, it was his perspective. I was like, God damn. Like, like, what could he have done better? It was so nice.
Yeah, it was. And he even, I was like, oh my God, the first time. And then because I couldn't figure out how he got the extra jump over to tactical.
Yeah.
And then also watching it, I was like, oh, Spica used his flash to move him while he had the Lee Sin Q on him over there. But I don't take away from Jose for that, you know? He's capitalizing on the opportunity, and then him doing every other part and flashing forward and getting the last kill and getting dragon and everything. Was impressive.
2 quick things. One, I totally agree that he's having his best split in the LCS by far. But heading into this split, I think a lot of people were like, did he just get a massive paycheck off one good tournament at Worlds and he's not actually that good? And I think this has been a resounding no to that question. He actually is really good. Now that he has, I feel like, good teammates around him as well, because the other FlyQuest were struggling. The other thing is about the Spica flash. You used to be able to, and I don't know if it's still in the game, but I expect it is, given that I think he tried to do this. You used to be able to disjoint Lee Sin second Q damage if you time the flash correctly. I assume that's what he was trying to do.
You still can, but it's tiniest little window. Someone did it in the LPL this year. I forget who, but I'm sure someone can link you the clip.
I assume he thought they were losing the fight, and he's like, if I die, and he just like did it, and he wasn't really thinking about where he flashed.
That's the only thing I was gonna bring. I was like, okay, I'll accept that, but then don't also do it towards tactical.
So if you do it, if you time it right though, the Lee Sin stops where he
kind of like stutters. Yeah,
he doesn't follow you. So it's a mistiming. Either way, it's a misplay from Spica. You can do that, but it's like tiny window where you immune the damage.
Yeah,
and then Lee Sin stops. So it basically is at the very end of the queue.
So, some characters have it, and it's a bigger window. Like Jarvan ult, you can flash the damage pretty easily.
That one's really easy.
It's really that's what I mean. Like a lot of characters do have this like flashable damage window.
I don't know if the Lee Sin one is a bug, to be honest with you, because it's like it's really hard to reproduce. I'm not sure if that's actually supposed to be in there or not, but it's been in there forever, and it rarely ever happens because it's like even on LAN, people don't try to do this because it almost never works.
There's a lot of these like things that you're not supposed to do, like the Pike QE combo. You remember like at Worlds when you were all I did was stamp and I tried Pike. I don't know if you were there. Pike QE,
we were all
Pike
doing
QE.
this.
Yeah. It was tough.
For sure.
And it's a bug, for sure.
Yeah. But FlyQuest, it's been fun to see them doing well. I think Tukoi definitely deserves a lot of credit, but Jose has been having a great split. So that has been exciting. 100 Thieves, they kind of like, I felt like, didn't feel that close against TL. I think TL came into it with a really good plan. Like the level 1, where that was the game with Core JJ and Hans just waiting in the brush and level 1 killing. Or did they kill him or did they just get his flash? They killed him, right?
I'm pretty sure that was the one where they Santorin and Core level 2 ganked, and then Core came back with his Hex Flash Nautilus.
What was the game where they did that level 1 then?
That was the next game.
That was the second Team Liquid game.
Okay.
So both Team Liquid games, Core JJ was ganking mid.
Team solo mid, baby. Everyone come mid for Bjergsen.
See, the funny part about that is obviously solo mid is not
whole team mid.
Not solo mid. So like. Then while the name implies a lot of like focus on mid lane, it's also kind of exclusive. Regardless, the Nautilus picks from Core JJ, and it was the same champion that he was on both times, were so effective at influencing mid lane.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job of actually just like putting Avidaga in the dirt. It felt like. I mean, this felt like more like, wow, TL, you're really good, than 100 Thieves, you're really bad. You had been talking a lot about the Someday Tryndamere. From what I recall, you were casting that game. And Someday, I think, has been very good on Tryndamere. I think 100 Thieves are still kind of in this like weird place where it feels like they're not playing maybe quite as well as they should. They feel like they're, a step below 100 Thieves and C9 and stuff. But you still, to your point, don't quite believe that they're like as bad as where they are in the standings. You still kind of have that feeling that like, oh, you're probably still going to be good in best of 5.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things where sometimes it can just be a hangover from the previous year. Like people can have a bad year and actually just be worse, or they're having a slow start and they're going to pick it up. But I tend to still have a fair bit of faith in 100 Thieves because I think their individuals are just so strong.
Well, and the parts that are working are different parts a little bit than last year. I guess like Someday last year was more of just like the weak side guy, and that he has this Tryndamere angle that almost always seems to go at least decently well, should be good for the team. But FBI and Huhi and Avidaga are all underperforming from last year. I'd say Closer's about the same or better. Like he's still playing very well, but it just feels like the rest of the team has lost him.
What do you think's going wrong with their bot lane? Because like it went from pretty much everyone agreeing that this is the best bot lane 2v2 in the league last year to like they're there.
I don't know.
Well, one of the things is I think their competition is stiffer, but they're also just making individual mistakes. And one of the biggest topics we talk about with 100 Thieves has been inconsistency. And it's always highlighted the inconsistency in the mistakes in the team phase when it's about, engages, straight up the middle, or vision control set up for some of these objectives. But there have also been some of those within the lane from them. So I still have faith in these players because they have shown us that they're deserving of that trust, that they can bring it back. But they have also made laning mistakes that we did not see from them last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they can kind of pick it up, because I do still have a lot of faith in that team, and I want there to be, that grouping, like it felt like earlier in the split, where there are going to be like that 4 or 5 teams that really are a threat for the top, and I think that's going to require.
I still feel that way. For what it's worth, I at least still feel EG 100 Thieves extremely competitive.
Me too.
With
But if it was today, I would not feel confident betting on them in a best of 5 against TL or C9. And so that's why I'm hoping that they can like make that little improvement so that when it comes to playoff time, if that's our semifinals,
you want your odds to be 50-50.
Yeah, you don't want to know. You want to be able, like, you want people on both sides of the coin, right? Because that makes it so exciting when you really can't tell who's going to be able to take it.
Agree.
Yeah, unfortunately, transitioning to EG, they're still going back and forth a little bit. They got slammed in their C9 game. They had a good game versus Immortals. Danny tweeting out about the draft after the C9 game. Like, there was they seem to be like a team that's still like in good spirits, because I don't think Danny was like flaming his team.
What was your take on that tweet?
My take on that tweet is actually it's not that bad, because I assume what happened was
find it.
Yeah, you can go read it out loud.
It basically was like, oh, like our draft was boomed, right? Like
especially for me, I couldn't do anything.
They have people that outrange me. We have losing mid jungle 2v2, and they have a mid jungle that can move towards bot lane. And it was like Rise Volley beats Syndra Kha'Zix in the 2v2, and then have great ults to dive bot. Basically like, I would hope anyone would get slammed in this game like me, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, it was interesting. Like I liked it, but I could also see the coaches not really liking it.
The way I assume it went, because Danny doesn't seem like the kind of person who just like rage tweet something, and especially because he had like the crying face emoji afterwards. It didn't feel like he was mad. I think he was just saying like lamenting this game. I assume that
crying face emoji.
Yeah, the crying face emoji. I think he had it on there.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm looking at it right now.
He wasn't mad. So my perspective is that they probably retroed the game as soon as it ended. They probably all went in the room before they went to their media obligations, which often happens. And you talk about the game a little bit.
And the coach is like, my bad, dog.
And the whole team is kind of like, wow, that draft kind of felt terrible. And if the whole team is aligned already, like you tweeting that like that draft sucked for me, no one's going to get mad because they all agree. And he wasn't like throwing anyone under the bus in particular. Like, Inspired shouldn't have picked Kha'Zix. This was a crap Kha'Zix game. He just said that like their mid jungle 2v2 can spill over to his lane. I didn't think it was that bad.
I liked it.
I liked it too.
But it is throwing the coach under the bus. Let's be clear.
Well, I mean, maybe, but like players have influence on draft too. So like
they do. But whose ultimate responsibility is it on stage?
Jojo to say I'm gonna lose this 2v2 if you pick Kha'Zix.
So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he didn't name a name, but like, do you have to name a name, right? If you're like, ooh, my mid laner this game really, you know
but like
I mean?
players do that all the time. Like, oh, my bot lane boomed this game. One of the C9 guys tweeted that one time where like my bot lane boomed. Like
again, I loved it. Yeah. I just don't know if like if people will look at this and be like, shouldn't have done that, or if more people will be down to do it. Because
so you're trying to
the honest opinion.
Yeah, you're trying to downplay the like, oh, sliding coaches aspect of it, but there have been several little instances where friction between EG players and EG coaching staff is not a new topic. So I feel like there is, some friction there.
You think he's throwing shade?
I think he's throwing shade, but there definitely is friction between players and coaching staff on this team. And I also like the other aspect of it where he's complimenting Cloud9's drafting, because I also think that, even after LS leaving, Max has done a very good job. He has had several really good drafts for Cloud9, leveraging a lot of advantages in attacking either the opponent's win condition that they set up early on in draft, or having some flexibility later on to be able to pivot to. And I think that, he and Cloud9 are deserving of a lot of credit there.
It's not quite as flashy, but it is good drafting.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, I also think that maybe this is going to be an interesting thing to track for Evil Geniuses, because clearly there is some sort of friction there, and we don't know anything on inside, but interesting to see how it develops, I guess.
Yep. Dignitas, they take down CLG. It was like the Caitlyn Lux game. That looked pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
They had a loss to FlyQuest. At least they got a win this week, but like it does still feel like Dignitas has been struggling a lot. You mentioned Fake God. That was like the Fake God Malphite game where I guess it was the one man Leona ult, right? It was, or
he ulted frontline 3 fights in a row.
Yeah.
One I think was
was a one man support, I thought, though.
Yeah, that was the last one where they lost the game on the tail end of it. It was like the Nautilus hooked River, and I think he was trying to do like a counter engage, but rather than like counter engage on the actual threats, he counter engaged on the Nautilus who had already hooked the guy.
Yeah.
And so like it just did nothing. And there was a couple fights where you could say he could have played better. And I mean, like other things went wrong in that game, to be fair, but it does feel like this team is kind of middle of the pack. They can't quite seem to string together enough good games.
Are they even middle of the pack anymore, though? It feels like they won all their games at the start, and now they've just been kind of chain losing.
What are they?
Right?
So they are middle of the pack.
Yeah, but like
right
as far as like actual strength, I'm not talking about standings.
Because they're directly 5. So
Yeah.
they're exactly the line, tied with Golden Guardians at 5 and 6. But the trajectory is what you're referring to, where they did get a lot of the wins at the beginning, and so the trajectory is what the business would refer to as a worrying trend,
right? Because it's exactly. It's like because we had talked about where will FlyQuest actually be, where EG or 100 Thieves actually going to be. To me, it's like where is Dignitas actually going to be, right? If we're putting FlyQuest at 5th, it is where you're kind of like power ranking them, and you're saying okay, like EG, 100 Thieves, TL, C9 are all above you. Like where is Dig? Because I feel like Immortals has been looking better than them. I feel like Golden Guardians has been looking better than them. Like CLG is like debatable, but I mean, and like TSM, so it's like, are they like 8th? Because I'm trying to struggle about like who would I even put them over besides CLG and TSM?
I think it's interesting to see how they would get over direct comparisons of opponents, because I still think for Dignitas, the same truths apply to this team, where jungle is very strong. River, especially if they set up lanes for him to work with, can definitely accomplish all of your early game goals, can definitely play aggressive, has even shown some decent farming games of like, a rare Diana here or there, a little bit more, more scaling junglers. Scaling junglers and carry junglers are not really in a super strong spot right now compared to a lot of the facilitators. So I actually think it is a very good meta for him to be in, like, this Jarvan role for the team and facilitate. But
Jarvan's permabanned.
Yeah, Jarvan is permabanned. His Lee Sin is also really good, and Lee Sin's in a super good spot. But some of the difficulties lie in who are you facilitating to actually get the win and carry. And in some of them, like, this is why I like Dignitas. I'm not really even focused on where are they going to end up. What's the 1 to 10 curve for every team in the LCS? It's like, where are their strengths and how do that interact with the other teams? They have some of the best facilitators in the entire league. Aphromoo and River, jungle and support, being your super
Biofrost?
Biofrost, with how the legacy of Aphromoo on Dig, with how well Biofrost has played coming back into the league, I feel like having really good facilitators right now is one step, but the consistency of the carry that you're facilitating, we're seeing how it just means so much,
I'll let you get in, Mark, but did you see High's segment with Blue? He did an interview with Blue. It's like pro on pro or whatever it's called. Yeah. And basically, it was really interesting. But basically he was coming right at him. He's like, you're 10th and 4th.
I doesn't always have the like subtle, like, so I was watching one of your games and what I noticed was this. He's like, why'd you do this?
Yeah. So he's talking to him and he's like, yeah, so you're 10th in 4 position, you're 10th in this and stuff. Like, why is that? Like, do you suck?
It was like, are you passive?
Yeah. Are you butt? Because you look butt. But it was interesting, right? Because he actually gave a pretty good answer, and he's talking about how, like, they have to play towards bot side, like that's what they believe their team's strength is. So that means that he has to play more carefully around mid lane, and that kind of goes into what you're talking about, like, who do you play for? And it sounds like, at least through what he said, it's bot lane, and that's all they're playing for.
Yeah, and I think Neo has been good when you're talking about who you're kind of spoon feeding these things to. I think Neo more or less has been solid top 5 AD carry for sure for me. I think the problem that they face when we're talking about where they end up, it's the same problem that Golden Guardians, IMT are also facing, and even FlyQuest a little bit, though I have more faith in them. But those 3 teams all fighting for what feels like the 6th place spot in playoffs, all have similar level of problems, even if it's like in different positions. Like, okay, I don't have the top problem for Immortals. Revenge looks pretty good, but they have horribly inconsistent playmaking, it feels like. And when we talk about the facilitators, Destiny and Xerxes have been kind of up and down. And for Golden Guardians, I think they should be good, but when you drop a game to TSM, that's a game you need in your back pocket to make top 6. Like, that's a team that most teams are going to beat, and you just gave up a W in the W column, a win column, like a number in the win column, the W in the W column, as opposed,
the Corki package thing was
so large,
weird.
Mark. I had to raise both hands to make the letter.
Shut up.
How about that?
My point is, all three of these teams that we're talking about haven't convinced me they deserve it any more than anyone else does.
The Corki package thing in that game was like actually so troll though. Like I saw some people flaming a Blaze Olive for that, and I'm like, come on, you didn't know it was gonna work like that. Like I've played a fair bit of Corki. I've never actually had that happen. Like I know it does have the displacement.
Yeah.
I just didn't expect it to actually go all the way pop them over the wall. And it popped them so far over the wall that it actually removed them from the package.
Yeah.
Right. So like they weren't actually taking the dot. That was absolutely game changing. Because when I watched that live, at first I see the Magnar, I'm like, oh, huge package, game over. And they all get bumped out. I was like, no shot that happens. No way.
I will say, I thought I was going to defend Blaze Olive this week in the blame because people were, talking about this. And I thought he knew the interaction, but just like, who doesn't take that package there and make the same play? Like, you could argue you should.
Well, who thinks it bumps them fully over the wall and out? You just don't consider it.
Right. But he didn't even know it could bump them over the wall. And I was like, I was trying to defend you, dude. All I was going to say too is I knew it could go over wall. All displacement abilities, your own abilities and other abilities, go over the wall unless explicitly coded not to. It's easier to assume any displacement ability will put things over the wall unless it says they don't go over walls or terrain or whatever, like wall stuns and things like that. That said, I didn't know it was 500 range. Someone asked me what I thought it was. I was like, 250, 300? It's a 500 range knockback on the package. It's actually not that short, So I was surprised at the distance.
I've gotten hit by enough to know.
You go flying.
And what I was going to say is that because I feel like I have a pretty good, feeling for how much it's going to bump you. He would like if he was one like tiny, I don't know what our unit of measurement.
Teemo's 100 range.
I've never really liked the Teemo thing.
That's why I went for it.
Yeah,
I always say
you were staring right in my eyes.
Yeah. A couple pixels is a good one.
Yeah, if he was a little bit over to the side, it was so close because you do want to nudge them very close against the wall so they can't, have any safe space. But so it was like he was very close to having also the perfect package that pins them. In this really small area and, trying to get the bump on them so that you instantly apply the damage. So I still would defend him and not.
Yeah, I ended up defending the decision to go in there. And you have a limited time. You can't just sit there and line it up. Like the stun doesn't last that long. You have to go as soon as you go.
Nar jump flash ulted, didn't he? It was like a quick engage. You're not like, all right, let's see here.
Yeah,
let me line it up.
Let me get on my protractor and
even take a deep breath, hold it.
Even if they can end up over the wall. I think a lot of people end up sending them over the wall there just because it's the thinnest wall in the game. Literally, I think.
But that one I felt bad about because it's like you can't lose that game. It is an important game, but also like that game was decided on a little thing.
Yeah.
And then they have to play C9. That's not an expected win, right? Yep. Like C9 is looking really good. I think one of the things that's been most impressive to me about C9 is just like it feels like these last couple of weeks. If you are not really a top level team, they're going to just absolutely blow you out of the water really early, right? Like the laning prowess of some of these players, I think is pretty incredible. Everyone's obviously looking a lot at Summit, but I do think they've had really strong lanes, and Blaber is really good at abusing like any sort of errors.
And when we've supposed to be moved on from Sam, but I have to shout out Fudge. He's only died once pre-15, all split long, and he's I don't know, for the role swap position, you'd be like, the thing I'm worried most about is if he gets abused in lane. He's like, actually, he's fine. Yeah, he's actually really good.
I was impressed with his role swap adaptation very early on already. So I'm just cruising through with on board with this. The off-season changes for Cloud9 and that switch also leveraging them being able to get Summit and bring over has just been so good. But we are very deep into this episode, so let's bundle together CLG and TSM, boys. The pairing, the match made in heaven, the oldest rivalry in League of Legends, the very first rivalry ever created. Reggie versus Hotshot. They're holding hands at the bottom, holding hands with 9 and 10, baby.
Yeah, and it's rough. Like TSM is lucky that they actually beat Golden Guardians, right? Or they're like a couple games back of 9th, right? I think them losing to CLG, last week guess it was a week and a bit ago now, was the one that like stung most for the TSM fans that I know. They're like, I can't believe that we're this much worse than the second worst team. You know, like, where did it all go wrong? CLG, I think that expectations were maybe a little bit high for this team coming in.
Guilty.
I think
we share that as well.
Yeah, sorry, friend.
It's one of those things where it's like, I do think still them being at the bottom is less of like less condemning than the TSM squad. Almost, it feels like I think not as bad. A, because they spent a lot less, and B, because it feels like they were more going like, oh, let's figure out some stuff for the future. TSM has some players that like are supposed to be, you know, like going right now kind of thing. I mean, you're coming in with last year's MVP. You don't want to be in 10th place. It is rough for them right now, and they have to kind of figure out some things. But I will say, I think Takeover has been solid, even in the loss. I think it was his R game was in the loss, right?
And then it was Silas was the win. Yeah.
I thought he actually played well both games. So I do think that there have been like at least some bright spots. It doesn't look as bad. TSM's team show thing, I think, is actually pretty interesting this year because they were like pretty honest about like some of the struggles that they've had, and like Tactical talked about, like, he gets an interview question, oh, like, how do you get past these tough losses? He's like, I've been crying a lot, you know, like that's how I
Yeah.
cope. I was like, whoa, shit, like that's rough, right? Like they're going through it. They all want to win, but they've talked a lot about the struggles with communication, the struggles with like team environment is really rough. You know, Speaker was talking about like, this is, you know, he has a short career, but like this is by far the toughest split he's had, where there's a lot of tension because everyone knows that things are going bad. No one wants it to go bad, right? Everyone's trying to figure out how the hell do we fix this? But it does really affect, you know, your mental, affects the team environment. And I think that's part of what TSM is probably really struggling with now.
Yeah. TSM has a lot of struggles right now.
Yeah. I mean, Takeover looked good. He is, if you've, his career-wise, he's just usually been a playmaker / assassin for the most part. Akali's, Silas is one of his signature champs, LeBlanc, Ari, like these are the kinds of things you expect him to look good on. So it was cool that he got in there and was able to make a win on it. We'll see if people start targeting him a little bit more, because I feel like rookies, when they come in, often get their champ if they want it. Like Ayla got Thresh a billion times in a row, and that was like clearly his best champ. So we'll see if people start targeting him. CLG just feels rough. They're just so disjointed. That game versus Immortals, like they got one fight with Kennen the entire time, and then just like didn't defend the Baron because they assumed it was gone. And it was like, I don't know. They just don't seem to have their head in the game sometimes.
Yeah, it feels like they don't really have a good idea of like what their win conditions are, right? That was the Kennen into, I think it was Graves, right? Yeah. Against Immortals. And it's like, you have got to find windows where you're going to leave that lane, right? You cannot win the game playing AP Kennen, just AFK farming in lane against a friggin' Hullbreaker Graves, who all he wants to do is keep you inside. So that to me, that game screamed out like, you don't have anyone calling for deep wards. You don't have any sort of plan to set up the flank. You don't have those windows where you're going to actually, you know, take your swing, because you have got to do that against a team and a comp like that. So hopefully they'll be able to right the ship a bit. I'm interested to see how TSM looks over these next couple weeks, because I'm expecting more changes if things are not looking good soon. But this is going to be a really exciting weekend we have coming up. We have a lot of really good games. EGTL as well as TLC9, like both their games are really, really exciting. TSM EG, I think, will be fun for a lot of people to see if TSM can kind of get things going again. You know, some really, really good games this weekend. So I'm very excited for it.
TLC9, quick predictions. I got to say TL because I said that they wouldn't drop another game. Well, I didn't say they wouldn't drop another. I said they'd drop one more game.
I feel like TL is safe money still, but I actually am kind of just feeling the C9 win. I don't know. I think Blaber has been so good. I could see Blaber running them over.
Yeah, I
think TL's the smarter prediction though. I think I'm being a Dumbo. I'm gonna go with
it.
Guy's gut.
I feel a very similar way. You know, you're like, I trust Team Liquid.
Yeah.
But I'm excited by Cloud9.
It's like when you get to a menu and you're like, this is what I always order and it's good. But this, for some reason right now.
Ooh, it's calling my name.
I want this one.
I mean, Cloud9, it really seems good right now, where every player is kind of hitting their peaks, you know, hitting their strides. Blaber coming off that Volbear game too, I was like, all right, I am in there. If Blaber, of all players, is not going to have a random death sometime in the game and give away a giant ass bounty,
yeah,
like I'm fully in.
I agree, but then when I try to justify it, I'm like, think TL's mid lane is better.
TL's
bot lane is better. I think Bwipo is playing incredible, so it's not like Summit is just going to turbo stomp this guy. Like Bwipo could win that lane. And Santorin's having one of the best splits of his career. So I'm like, why do I think C9 is going to win? What am I doing?
There's something about it. Feels
something
right.
about it. It's just the magic. You can't quantify it.
I think if Team Liquid make anything happen early on bottom side, then I'll go Team Liquid win. Because I think Hansama, Core JJ have been much better in lane. As much as I'm also in agreement, Berserker has been really great, especially for how young he is. Most of his big effect comes later in the game. Hansama and Core JJ don't waste any time. Core JJ and Hansama will get a 2v2 kill, or if he's not there, Core JJ is killing your mid laner.
Yep.
So that's where I feel like there's a big difference in this matchup, and that's why we're both like, okay, Team Liquid is the smart bet, because support difference, I think, is the biggest difference.
But we're both trolling. We're going C9.
In all 10. And as well, Summit said Bwipo is the next best top laner in the league. So even he is giving credit and being like, okay, I have been smashing for Cloud9, but Bwipo is the, my best possible opponent.
The copium for the C9 side is Winsome's been doing better. Winsome has been getting better. He had a really nice roam one of these games on Nautilus, I think, as well, to find a setup kill for Fudge in mid lane. So maybe he'll be matching Core JJ's roams now. All
right, well, we'll see it. I'm excited for it. That'll wrap it up for us for now. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive when we return. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. Submit your questions on Anchor.fm. We like getting those takes as well. Send us the Twitter questions. We're checking them out everywhere. We even got one from YouTube comments this week. LCS continues Saturday, 1:30 p.m. PST. Golden Guardians, 100 Thieves. We'll see you there.